Dude, how you doing today?
Dude, I'm chilling. I'm doing great, man. I'm pretty much just been home for the first time in a minute, starting like pretty much this week, So I'm kind of getting back into the swing and just doing normal shit, which is dope. It's just nice to like go to the gym and get food and hang out with friends and stuff. Just do like very like mundane stuff in an awesome way. Stuff that's like a needed palate cleanser for like all the touring and travel and
Yeah,
whatnot.
that's such a good place to even just start chatting alone. You have been on the road literally nonstop, it seems like, since like, I don't know, like December of 2021, maybe, or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah. A little before that, actually, we like pretty much once the doors opened, COVID wise, like we would have been playing in June and July, like a lot of other people, if not for the fact that we had Drives Out East coming out at that time, and we wanted to like poise the record release shows rather to be a little bit after that. So we really got rolling like late August 2021 and did not stop until after the Knocked Loose tour. And we had like 3 months off after that, I want to say, or 2 months. But a month of that went to recording the new record.
Yeah.
So, and then which rolled into another fall. The following fall was just as crazy. We did the Stick to Your Guns tour, and then we did a week with Drain, and then we did basically like a week with Neck Deep, and then we did 3 weeks in Europe with Silverstein. And then we got back from Europe, had 1 day home, and then flew to LA and played for the Children. And that was like the stopping point. That was where it's like, okay, now you have a month off. I was like,
Yeah.
it was just insane.
And now you're back in Long Island. You're enjoying
Mhm.
yourself. That's amazing.
Oh yeah. I found in the midst of all the crazy touring, the key is just legitimate off time. Like both falls kind of, and that's not to say we won't do this again, because I'm sure we certainly will. But I think touring nonstop both falls, like with no real break, kind of like ran us a little ragged, because there was no way to really enjoy off time or like fall into any type of routine, because
Yeah.
you'd be out the next week. You'd have a week home, then you just do something else. And I think the key to not getting any fatigue or like really like burning out, despite doing like obviously very dope, cool, special things, is just having like legitimate blocks of off time. If you're off for a month, you're off for a month. Then you go on the next tour. And if you're home for 2 months, you're home for 2 months. And that's not to say you don't do stuff in between. I mean, we're playing a show, Sound Majority, in 2 weeks, and we're shooting music videos and stuff. We're still doing stuff while we're home.
Yeah.
But like I can get in some type of normal routine while I'm here. Like that just makes it all balanced out, right?
You can go to the Chili's in Long Island.
Mhm.
My girlfriend.
Exactly. I can go to the South Setauket Chili's, which I have done as recently as like a few days ago.
Oh, okay.
It's awesome.
Hell
I went to that Chili's very, very recently.
yeah.
It was awesome.
Dude, that's fucking amazing. Well, dude, that was sort of like, that's kind of been like my biggest question, like seeing your guys' touring and just kind of seeing, watching it be this nonstop thing, ever since I guess I discovered your band, started listening to you guys. Like, it seems like you've always been on the road. And sort of a question that I've had is like, how has the band sort of grown during that time? Because like, this is like the first like year plus of being like a full-fledged, full-time touring band. If I understand correct,
Yeah.
too, like a lot of you guys have like full-time jobs as well, too. I know like Harold like works in the music industry, I believe, as well.
Yeah, he works fully remote. He's been working fully remote pretty much since we started touring, and
Like,
has
in the
actually
band,
managed to
right?
get. Yeah, he'll take meetings for the van and stuff. Like, he's been promoted with multiple times within his position, working almost entirely remote, which is insane. But yeah, I think his job is like intrigued with what he's doing, because the music he works in is more like classical and pop music stuff.
Yeah.
But like, they understand enough what he's doing, and they understand that he's ground level with a musical group. So they're like, oh, like, you're cutting your teeth on like what our artists do. Like, they like value his perspective and stuff. It's actually pretty cool. But with that said, like, I mean, I don't see the growth while we're on the tours themselves, usually, or the tours themselves rather. Like, because we've mostly been doing support stuff and we haven't headlined yet, like, we just did that Bayside tour, and it was amazing for us. But most of those rooms don't know who we are. Like, we play, and we did really great on merch on that tour. Like people clearly were listening. We watched the Spotify stuff tick up like night by night. Like people who didn't know who we were psyched on it and like made a point in picking up a shirt, a record, a way to like remember who we were leaving that room. And, you know, like presumably or hopefully we'll be back the next time. But I see the growth when we do stuff like fests, an example, because since we haven't headlined per se, which we're due for, and that's gonna happen in the coming record rollout and year and whatnot. Because we haven't headlined, like it's really hard to like bar like, oh, like where is the band at? Like who actually comes out to see us? There things like the Stick to Your Guns tour. I caught like inklings of it because, you know, like we had like some like crazy sets on that tour, and you know, we were second of 5. So it's like with no diss to Stig or Kublai Khan or anyone else on the tour, obviously, but there were definitely some people who like came out to that and were like, hey, like I'm really just here to catch you guys and I'm gonna bounce. Like, and that's because we don't and haven't headlined and stuff, you know, like so people are trying to like see it where they could see it. The Drain tour was another example of like functionally that was almost like a faux headliner for us, where obviously those are Drain shows, but that's where like that's where I can chop it up with people and be like, oh, you're not like a hardcore kid. You don't know us from like the scene per se. You know us from other channels and whatnot. Which is really interesting. And I feel like that LDB set we just played too, which is one of my favorites we've ever played, is another example of like, oh, like there are people in here who like, I'm sure like other bands on the fest, but like you're not here because it's like your routine thing yearly to like travel to Hardcore Fest and like many do. Like you're here because you're like, oh, like I'm from wherever and 3 bands I love are playing this fest, so I'm going to it. Like I guess again, like scene context set aside, you know, these are just like music fans who were like, oh, like perhaps even based off like the tour we did, like Koyo, Kublai Khan, Knocked Loose are doing LDB this year. Well, I have to see that again. You know, like it's interesting to. I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's just it's very interesting for me because I do try and I guess like get like a top-down view of it. I try and like understand it from both like being in the band perspective, but also kind of zoomed out, just because again, like as I've said, we haven't headlined, so we have no metric on like, oh, like Koyo does X many tickets here. Like I know what it feels like to play certain cities. When we play Tampa, it's dope. When we play LA, it's dope. When we play Philly, it's dope. There's places where like clearly people come out no matter what show or tour we're on.
Yeah.
But it's hard to like bar that like, oh, like this has leveled up a tier. This has leveled up a tier. Like we just don't know, you know?
Of course. I mean, I think I meant more like actually personally growth. Like I think is sort of what I'm getting at here with that question is like, you know, Koyo starts essentially as, I guess, like a side project, right? Like, I mean, this was not a band that you were expecting to take off the way that it did.
It was explicitly not supposed to tour. Like
exactly.
The intention was like, don't tour. We don't do that with this one.
Yeah. Which is, completely did the opposite.
Yeah.
But like with that being said, like, you know, here you are with like your best friends, you're on the road, and you know, sort of like that first year of being like a full-time band, I feel like it has to be such a pivotal thing, just like in terms of band dynamic. Like how are you guys like sort of like growing together as friends? And then also like how you're balancing like your lives at home. Like I know a lot of you guys like have like serious relationships and all kinds of different things. And like this is your first year like really having that, you know, clear split between like work and home life, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, like, because we are all good friends or best friends, in fact, you know, it's like my closest, longest friends that we're doing this band with. So like, because of that, a lot of parts of it are really easy. Harold's mentioned it before in like other podcasts we've done and whatnot. And it's like we get home from tour and we're like hanging out the next week, you know, like it's very like the band is just a bonus. We'd be hanging out the same amount anyways, you know, if there was no band.
Bands aren't like that too, I feel.
Yeah, straight and not in, you know, people have different dynamics and different band dynamics, but like I would say more aren't like that than are. Like I don't think that's a crazy take. That like I think a lot of people, even if you're touring in a band with your best friends, get home and they're like, yo, I gotta like 1 month clean of you guys. Like, don't talk to me, don't hit me up.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I've never in my life been in that seat to a limited capacity, but never to that extent, like I think in a lot of ways, like the growth has been like, like we're learning how to have each other's backs more as as a band and not just as friends. Because I know I could call anybody in Koyo when I'm off tour and say, I need your help with XYZ. Like, I could be in any type of crisis, whatever, they'd be there for me. But I think the big learning experience through this has been like, like we're operating full time like this when we're here. Like, even if you have a job, this is an additional job by proxy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the learning and growing phase has really been like looking out for one another. How can we help one another? How can we hold each other down while we're doing such a heavy push for something, and obviously it's hard to balance like real life stuff too. Like, for the last couple of tours, my girlfriend's also been our touring photographer because she did that beforehand. She used to tour with that band Free Throw, and she did that band Hot Mulligan and Heart Attack Band. So she had done stuff like that for a little bit. So for a little, we'd been dating for a little while, and it was like, like logically speaking, like you do that, why don't you just come do that for us? And it's been great. But it's at some point or another, she's going to get a different job and presumably be a little more settled down and not be touring as much. So it's like things like that have made it a little easier for me personally. But like, I know everyone misses like their relationships back home. I know everyone even misses other friends, families. People miss the comfort of what we're doing right now, just sitting in a chair in your room or home office. Like, that is something that after 3 weeks of tour, like, you could be psyched on the tour and want to go another 3 weeks and still be like, damn, I would love a couple minutes just to do this,
Yeah.
But I think everyone has don't get me wrong, we've hit hiccups and speed bumps and had some harder times than others, but I think the growth has been a growth of like resilience and a growth in like camaraderie with like the band in mind. We've always had that friendship camaraderie. We've always been like there for one another and great friends to one another. But being great bandmates to one another, I think has been like the growing experience in a positive way,
That's beautiful, man. No, I mean, you can totally tell when you watch your guys' set live. Like, it seems like you guys all like each other on stage. It seems like you guys have a really tight dynamic. And I think that just gives a whole nother level of authenticity to what you guys do. And I think that's really cool. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. And like that is like, for us at least, like that's like the fundamental thing is like we just want to keep it as real as we can, like I'm not fronting. Like, our band is obviously like going for it. We're touring full time. We're putting out a record on Pure Noise. Like, we're trying to make our band our job legitimately. Like, I'll be the first to tell you, but I think we can do that without stacking countless things that keep it real. We can keep it real despite running it the way we're running it, and part of that authenticity, I think, is rooted in just actually being friends,
Yeah, exactly, dude. No, 100%. And I was curious too, like, obviously you have come off these really big tours, like within the last year, like just even like in the span of like 6 months, you do this huge tour with like Silverstein and Comeback Kid and out in Europe. And then you do then you dive into the Bayside tour with I Am the Avalanche. And seeing those tours, that they get so cool to like see like those like sort of elder statesmen take out a younger band like Koyo, and like you see it all I mean, Bayside's always done that, and I think Silverstein's always done that as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Shouts out all those guys, amazing people.
For sure.
And like with that, like I mean, like even now, like Silverstein's taken out like one step closer on their next tour. Like it's so cool to see. And I'm curious, like, were there any lessons learned from like those elder statesmen? Did you ever find yourself like getting to chat with like maybe like Shane from Silverstein or like, Anthony from Bayside or Vinny and those guys,
Yeah, for sure. I think we learned a whole lot from all of them. Literally speaking, like every band aforementioned, like there were quite a few lessons and courtesies taken from everyone. I think on the Silverstein tour, that tour was a lot more just chopping it up and like hanging out in green rooms, in the sense of like, just shooting the shit about stuff. And like, obviously I feel like I talked to Paul a lot, and like, about just like, I feel like they asked us about stuff almost
Yeah.
more than perhaps we asked them, in the sense of like, just oversight on like music and what's happening right now, and like what's happening with peers, and like, what do you think's dope? What do you think's not dope? And I think with them especially, like they and Bayside both kind of taught this like masterclass, and like, you know, you can be a headlining band and still just be available to people. Like, you don't have to be like a ghost just because you're running the show, literally speaking. And don't get me wrong, I understand when bands do that and when it's like that, but like, Silverstein is a very, very tenured band, and a very successful band. And like, in theory, they wouldn't have to, invite us onto their bus for a couple drinks. They wouldn't have to hang out in the same green room as us, but they do because they
Yeah.
care to. And the same goes for Bayside. Bayside, I think I definitely, in the lessons department, I think we chopped it up a little more, like on like the way of like, that I think they were just like a little more, got down to the nitty gritty of their career ups and downs, and like things they feel like they did right, things they feel like they did wrong, whatever. Like Silverstein, it's not that they wouldn't have, or Comeback Kid too, like wouldn't have said stuff like that. Does even Senses Fail brought some stuff up as well on
Yeah.
that same tour. Like, people naturally, throw some tips and their perspective on stuff and whatnot as you go, like as anyone I feel like kind of would. But Bayside were definitely like, and Vinny as well, and Mike, and really just like that whole camp. Like, I think because we all got pretty close on that tour, like they were very, very candid about a lot of things, which between both tours, I feel like we learned so much,
Yeah.
like just in the way of like, you know, perspective from bands that have had careers, perspective from bands that have something to look back on, up, down, and everything in between. Like, we're still in the thick of it. Our band turned 3 this year, and we couldn't play shows for a year and a half of that, So it's like we're still, we might be tenured touring guys and tenured band people, but we're not a tenured band, if you would,
Well, yeah, I mean, like, for sure. I mean, like, yeah, Silverstein's been around. I think they're like coming up on their 25th anniversary, which is
Yeah,
like insane
pretty crazy
to think about.
and still crushing. Like, another common thread with both of those tours that really spoke to me personally, and I think all of us as well, was they play new songs, their fans still know it. Bayside
Yes,
plays new songs, their fans know the new songs. I think there are plenty of bands that get looped into nostalgia world, and that's cool. Like, look, like, it's just cool to have a career that's long standing. If that's nostalgia for some bands, that's cool. Like, not hating on that, but it was really, that's like, like a deep seated thought, or perhaps even an insecurity of mine, where it's like, yo, like, will this mean a thing to anybody in 10 years? Will they even want to hear new songs in 10 years? And, bands like Silverstein and Bayside are clear evidence that, like, your lifers, the people who are really about your band, they do. They want to hear Silverstein at 25 as much as they wanted to hear Silverstein at year 2, which is cool.
100%. Dude, I totally agree. And I was going to bring that up. Like, I feel like there's such great examples of what a band's career can be. Like, I mean, I've probably interviewed Silverstein more than probably any band in my career. And we've talked about this so many times. And I know Shane, he's actually been on the show.
Really
And
sweet dude. He was
he's
awesome.
such a great guy. And like a big thing we talked about is like, I was a lifelong fan of that band and still am. And we talked about like, there were the dark years after like 2008, the recession hit, touring like
Mhm.
really was fucked. And then all 3 of those bands you mentioned too, Bayside, Silverstein, Comeback Kid, all survived Victory Records, like all that shit. And
Yeah.
they're all the biggest they've ever been in their careers. And it's like you go on
It's
Spotify
crazy.
and Shane would bring it up, like it was like they would play like El Corazon in Seattle, where I'm from.
Mhm.
And
We played that spot with Stig.
oh, sick. Nice. I
Yeah.
grew up like 5 minutes from there.
Oh, dope. That's sick. That spot's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's like funny because like he even mentioned, he was like, yeah, man, like in like 2009, there were people walking out before our set, like, maybe 200 people left in the crowd. And now it's like they sell out like a 2,000 cap room, like no problem.
Yeah.
All their new songs are like there's top stream songs on Spotify. And it's the same with Bayside. I mean, I was
Mhm.
watching your guys' show at the Velasco and I was like, this is so crazy. Like all these bands are playing, like Velasco's a humongous venue. Like,
Oh yeah, dude, it's insane. The fact that we've played there a couple of times as is already
yeah,
like that's insane, you know?
I saw
But
you guys there. I didn't get to say hi. I felt bad. So funny enough,
no stress. It's one of the, especially like an LA show. Those are like the, yo, I want to see every person I've ever known, and every person I've ever known is here right now. But I might only see like 50% of them. You know, like
well,
it's one of those things.
it was kind of funny because our mutual friend Mike Dubin was there.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
So
He wrote
Dubin,
for a little bit of the tour too.
exactly, yeah. So he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, I'm going backstage right now. Come with me." I'm like, "All right, cool." Like I was up in like the little like balcony VIP
Oh
area or
yeah, yeah. There's
whatever,
like the left and right little balconies. Yeah, yeah.
which was funny because at one point, like the top where that VIP section was, it was just literally me and my girlfriend watching the band. And I was like, this looks so awkward because it's like just us two up there, like,
Just chilling. Yeah, that's
in
awesome.
that area. But like, so we went backstage and I thought I saw like a couple of you guys back there, but we were back there with Dubin and we like never want to be in the way, like in the back and like in the backstage. And like I was like, we don't need to go back. Like Dubin's just so sweet. He's like, just come back. Like it's great.
Yeah, yeah. He's always looking out for everybody. He's one of those people, you know.
Just so sweet. But me and my girlfriend were like, we like watched Anthony Ranieri like tie his shoe, and we're like, you know what? We're gonna let him tie his shoe. We're gonna go back out. Like
Yeah.
we're like in the way right now. This is so
Right,
like,
respect. You know, I'm sure it would have been fine if you were hanging, but like, just know, obviously, I think anyone would appreciate that respect and courtesy and whatnot. You know,
yeah.
but it would have been cool if you were chilling. It's no stress.
Dude, it was awesome show though. You guys killed it, and I know you played
Thank
that
you.
new song as well too. What's the name of that new song as well that you played?
So we played two songs. We played
That's right.
one called 51st State, which it has been mislabeled by many as 51st Dates. It's not 51st Dates, it's 51st State. But that doesn't matter. You know, the album's not out, so who am I to amend that? You know, like
Yeah.
and the other one is You're on the List -1. And that will probably be the lead single for the record. We're shooting a video for it literally like 2 weeks from today.
Dude, that's such a good song title name. You're on
And
the list.
that's a Dubin title. So I might have the lore twisted to a degree. What I know is factual is that is a leftover title that he pitched to Taking Back Sunday to use, and they didn't use it. I don't know if it was like supposed to be any particular song's title, but I know that was leftover from Tell Your Friends era. Like, and he also named Cute Without the E. That was his idea. So he floated that. And You're on the List -1 just didn't get taken. So on some like lore, like deep rooted Long Island lore shit, we're like, all right, let's gobble that one up. We'll use it.
I just got chills, dude. That is
Mhm.
that is so. I was gonna
It's
say like
crazy.
that title feels instantly like Q without the E or like Jude Law on a semester abroad. Like it.
Yeah, that's straight from Dubin. So that's real full circle Long Island stuff.
God, Dubin's mind, man. It's on a whole like he's living in like a completely different plane of existence. Like
Dude, his life is insane. It's
Dubin
psychotic.
is a legend. He's gonna come on the show at some point as well too. I love picking
That'd be dope, dude. His history is obviously, as you know, like insane. Like I'm sure people would be really like fascinated to hear just how like wild his musical life is in all respects, you know.
One time we went, I met him at a hotel like rooftop, like this like past summer, and he just literally just did 2 hours of stories, and I just sat, just like drinking coffee and just ripping my jewel and listening.
Yep.
Like,
Dude, he's got an endless tank of them. It's crazy
dude,
because he has all like the 90s like Long Island hardcore stories, and then he has the whole like 2000s like post-hardcore emo stuff too, and all of his touring. It's like the sweet spot. All my favorite stuff is like just what he lived through, you know, like what his like all his peers and friends like the stuff I'm most inspired by is like his block of time, you know.
dude, that's amazing. Well, Dubin, if you're listening, we love you.
Mhm.
So like you know, with all that too, like obviously the new record was recorded almost like a year ago, right? Like I mean,
Yeah, we had to track more stuff. We finished tracking November. We did
wow.
a month in July and just didn't finish because things happen. You know, records take a while, and then we spent like 2 weekends in November in Brooklyn, and with John Markson, who did the record, just hammering it down. And then we finally got all the guest spots in, like we got like all that cemented. We're getting the last mixes in this week. Masters are scheduled for this weekend. So we're like ready to just submit so we can get this record out this year, because we're in the danger zone of like getting pushed to 2024, and we don't want that, you know.
No.
We want this out now. Like
Yeah,
we've been sitting on it. Dude,
I
like
always,
you said, we recorded it a year ago, you know, like I'm already getting bored of stuff. Like I want to move on to new stuff. Like,
well, I mean,
so we still got to play these 11 songs for 2
yeah.
years, you know, like, so I'm definitely, like, don't get me wrong, like I'm pretty psyched on the record. Like, I think it's by far and away our best stuff. And like, you'll hear the clear level up without any like crazy departures or crazy risks. It's just feels like more of the same, obviously better. But you know, we wrote some of those songs. There's tracks on that record that have a 2020 pre-pro Logic demo date on them, you know, like it's not, I'm psyched to play them, but some of them I've already heard to death. Like I've already like, you know, it's the classic band thing. But with all that said, want to get the record out this year, you know.
That's so exciting. And like, I feel like it's always hard to ask about like a record that hasn't been announced yet. So if there's nothing you can talk about yet, I totally
yeah.
Like,
I appreciate. I'm usually as candid as I can be with most anything ever. So I'll try and play ball best I can.
Well, I'm not going to ask you release date. I'm not going to ask you album title name or anything like that, or even collaborations. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you can list any of the collaborations,
the only one I can outwardly note is that Vinny's singing on the record, because we posted about that and stuff too. He did a spot while we were on tour, on the Bayside tour. Like, we'd asked him before that, but it got to a point where he was like, yo, like maybe we should just do this together in the same room and whatnot. And it made it like a little extra special, you know, like I got to sit there and watch a dude whose music I very much love, and I'm very much obsessed over in my life, you know, track a couple bars for my own record. It was like, it was surreal to watch, you know.
That's got to be like the most surreal, especially being from Long Island too.
Dude,
like, I mean, that's
it's bucket list shit, man. Like, that tour was bucket list shit as is, but like to have that then happen too is just like insane, totally crazy. But there's 2 more spots I'm keeping under wraps, but that's cool. Like, that's the one I'm happy to flaunt, because that's the coolest shit ever, you know.
That is so fucking cool, man. And like stylistically, I mean, like you're mentioning like it's not like this radical departure or anything like that. Like, but like obviously, like, I mean, you look at some of the songs that you have put out, like, because like some of the songs that you have put out are going to be on the full length, like Straight North will be on the
No, it's 11 brand new songs.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so those are just singles. Those are what they are. That's just a collection of 3 singles. You can call it an EP, whatever. We got 11 more.
Wow. Okay. So I did not know that. That's crazy. So like 10 digits away is not going to be on the full length record.
Nope. Just a single. Happy to, like, maybe down the line, if we do like a deluxe edition or something, like happy to like remaster it, get it all on the same level, and then like put it on vinyl. But like, we feel strongly about like, yo, we had 11 songs we're fucking psyched on. Like, 10 digits Straight North, Call It Off are all awesome, and songs that aren't going anywhere. But like, the intention with them is singles, music for our last year of touring, and they served that purpose and plenty more, you know. Like, but we've our whole thought, like, don't get me wrong, like John floated the idea of including 10 digits on the record, and we talked about stuff like that, but where we landed before we did pre-pro, like the mission statement was, if we get 10 songs or more that we think are as good as those songs and like deserve to be on the record in its place, we'll do the 10 new songs. And we landed on 11. So,
dude, that's really exciting. Dude, that's really cool. That's really exciting. And
I'm
like,
psyched.
Would you say there's like, I mean, because I feel like, you know, Call It Off, right? Like that's the 3rd single that you put out. So like, I mean, obviously that one, I guess in some ways could be the biggest departure we've maybe heard from the band.
Yeah, that's definitely like the softest effort, if you would. And I think in some ways, like, I can't get in people's heads. I can't you know, assume too much in terms of what people would expect. But I think the more pessimistic Koyo fan is probably like, okay, it's LP1, like they're this hardcore band that's like making emo music. Like we've heard some tracks that are a little softer. Like it's gonna be a whole record of ballads that I'm gonna check out, and that's just not the vibe. Like that's just not what it is, you know. In fact, there's no stripped down acoustic songs on the record. There's no songs even as like slow as Straight North. I want to say like it's kind of like a very high energy record. There's some sing along ballads. There's like, don't get me wrong, there's like if Koyo's like a spectrum and like Straight North, Call It Off for like one side of it, and like songs like Mariches and like Dreaming in a Wasteland or like the other side, like this record like mostly sits in the middle.
Okay.
But it's like a higher energy record, and like we didn't intentionally like write no like ballads or acoustic tracks or anything like that. I think that we wrote like 18 to 20 songs for this record and just strung together what felt natural and good and right in a sequence. And I think what we landed on is like a record that has a little core, a little pop punk, a little emo, like those are like the three faces of what the band is. And I think it's just a record that encapsulates that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's so cool though. Like, I mean, I definitely was expecting, you know, like I feel like Call It Off is probably could be my favorite Koyo song, honestly.
That's dope. I appreciate that.
Such a great song. And it works so well live too. Like, because I had never seen it live before until that.
Yeah, I mean, that tour was first time. We weren't doing it until then. We kind of held on to it for a second.
Did you play a song like that? Because I haven't gotten to watch the set yet, but I heard it was legendary. But at the LDB set, did you play Call It Off during
We opened with it.
Dude, that is
that was like the icebreaker opening track. We're like, we're gonna open with Call It Off into Mauritius, and it's gonna be bad shit, and it worked. So it was in fact bad shit.
That's so sick, dude. I love that, dude. I mean, that's so exciting. I mean, yeah, like LP1, I think you're doing it right. Yeah, just like hit people just straight ahead with all the energy right off.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, like bands are supposed to evolve and move forward, and we've certainly done that in a variety of ways with this record, but I don't think it'd be this unrecognizable thing, nor do I think it's this, because don't get me wrong, like there's plenty of bands that have done this where I'm like, damn, like not necessarily bum me out, but it's like, oh, suddenly this no longer is for me. Like we didn't slow down or soften up in any capacity. You know, we were like, what are the best parts of our band? It's usually the high energy tracks contrasted by slowing it down here or there, a soft bridge, you know, stuff like that, like goes a long way for us. Like a la 10 digits, you know, like that song's bridge is a little sweet, little pulled back. Still, it's got that bouncy beat, but it's not, you know, we soften up for a sec and then lower vocals, you know, riding on the ride. I know I'm getting a little, you know, drummy here over the mic.
No, I love this, dude.
But like that's like what I think a lot of this new record encapsulates is like, you know, dynamics. Yeah. Like, no, we didn't do any explicitly slow songs. I think there's one or two that you could really call like a fast song or like a real like proper hardcore leaning song. But most of this record just sits right in the middle where it's like we got the ballady choruses, but the verses are fast. We got like the high energy intros. We got like some faux breakdowns, like things that just swell the songs like in and out, you know, make it feel like all encompassing.
Yeah. So we're not getting the Koyo shoegaze record this time around.
Exactly. No Koyo shoegaze record, you know, and I like another thing about like Call It Off, is I like experimenting with stuff like that with singles, you know, like, I think the next time we do anything like acoustic per se, like I imagine it would be like a small release or a single. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's plenty of acoustic tracks that are baked into records that I love, and I love those songs. Yeah. And there's plenty of artists that just make primarily acoustic music that I also love. But I think for us, like we get our most value when we just fucking when we put the shit in drive and go, you know, like let's just run it.
I hate to make comparisons, but like look at a band like Story So Far, like a song like Clairvoyant, that was just a standalone single.
Exactly, and obviously went stratospheric for them, but like that was removed from the record. And I think also like they just, talking about them because I also love that band.
Yeah.
And I've, loved that band since I was a kid. What the cool thing is for me, like looking at their discography and whatnot, is things like Proper Dose, which obviously have like a lot of layered acoustic guitars and like, a little more dynamic to it in that respect, like perhaps even a little softer in certain regards in a good way. Like, I think because they sprinkled the acoustic EPs and the singles and like didn't detract from like the main records too much with that stuff, just did it on its own accord. When they finally incorporated that stuff a little more on Proper Dose, I think it was like primed and ready to do that. I think people were ready to hear that and psyched on it,
Oh,
not to mention that they're even if people weren't ready, like that record speaks for itself. It's amazing, but
it's their best record. I mean,
for sure, in my opinion, I think so as well. But like I think whether it was intentional or not, they kind of like laid the breadcrumbs to get people who love that band ready for a record where it's like, yo, like we're gonna all these songs are gonna have an acoustic guitar layer, even if there's like just there's songs with like gain and distortion that you'll still hear like acoustic stuff baked into it, which is cool. Like it's dynamic stuff. Like dynamics are everything, and that band definitely is like a prime example of understanding like dynamics and buildups and payoffs. Like in my mind, that's the bread and butter that like makes songwriting and makes songs win.
And I'm curious, like, because talking about like changing the dynamics and sound and like like obviously like hardcore, like where your roots come from, there can be like a degree of like fickleness a little bit with some listeners, obviously.
Like you
said, like this first you kind of sprinkling in the changes, but like I mean, I'm sure like being from Long Island, like I'm sure you probably love bands like Brand New or Crime in Stereo, who
totally
got really fucking weird like later on in their career. Thing. And I've always been
Devil
the listener.
God is Dead. Like it definitely gets like a little. Those are departures,
Yeah, and they got like pretty artsy with it, and I love that. And like I've always kind of been the weirdo that loves when bands like do the radical departure, and it's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 weeks ago, I wrote this article, a very separate band from what we're talking about, but for
right.
Horizon. And
that's a band that's had crazy departures, but clearly in a positive way. In
a positive way. And I'll tell you what, dude, I had to rank their albums, and I put
that's difficult in the sense of like, like it's at sometimes sure it's the same band, but perhaps you're comparing apples to oranges because it does get pretty different,
Well, the issue is, so I ranked their number one record, their most radical departure record, and I got shit on so hard on Facebook. You should have saw the comments were like, who is this person? They're a fucking idiot. It's all about the deathcore shit. Fuck this guy. All this. It was hilarious. I loved it. I was like in Nashville last week just reading the comments, and I'm like, I guess some people want to kill me.
Yeah,
awesome.
They hate me, huh?
It's awesome.
But it's so funny that's the take, because I feel pretty confident that the people packing out arenas for them perhaps would not agree.
Exactly, right? But I'm wondering, like, being from like obviously like I guess like any time there's any degree of aggressiveness in a band's sound or like in some ways, like even a band like that did kind of start out sort of like a small, like hardcore, not like a hardcore band, but like, they paid some dues, like obviously. Do you ever worry, like, because of like, I mean, hardcore is like this amazing thing, obviously it's this amazing community and culture, but like, do you ever worry that like in the future, like, if Koyo does want to get experimental one day and actually like make that really weird, like, Daisy sounding record or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, do you think you ever would tread into that territory? Like, or is that too far to look into the future? Like,
I definitely don't think we'd rule something like that out entirely. Like here's the thing, like in especially Long Island, it's eternally this is what it's been since, the 90s. But I think in the modern hardcore landscape, this is something that's changed even in a pre-COVID world, but really in a post-COVID world, is like hardcore music. There's obviously bands that are explicitly, you hear that and you're like, that's a hardcore band.
Yeah.
But hardcore in this day and age is less about the music being made, as funny as it is to say, and more about like the personnel involved and how the band carries themselves and operates, and the morals and what they bring to the table. Like, in perhaps even the ways they give back to the scene they're coming from. So don't get me wrong, like if we made a record, just for instance, like if we made a record that was comparable to what Brand New did with Daisy, like I'm not gonna sit there and say, oh, this is a hardcore record. But
No.
I think I don't think I would have I don't think I would need to defend or concern myself too much with like, are we a hardcore band or not? Because, you know, end of the day, like that stuff's arbitrary as is, and people, like you said, are fickle and they can feel how they want. Like, I don't give a shit. You can call us whatever you want. But by Long Island standards, we're very much a hardcore band. But, you know, I think as long as we're operating in all the right ways, otherwise, in a way that like is still caring for, not just showing where we came from, but nurturing where we came from and taking care of that. Still playing fests, still playing local shows with local bands that are happening right now. Like actually trying to like, you know, it doesn't matter how I can't predict the future in the sense of how big or not big the band would get, but at the very least, you know, if we do something like say a Bayside tour, for instance, just like play the LDB after, like always cycle back and give people an opportunity to see your band without a barricade. Fucking say what's good after the set. Like, don't be weird pseudo celebrity fucks, you know, like just be people. Like, as long as you're operating in that way, like I think the music you make more or less is truly as it should be, up to you. And I think there's bands that like did it that like, obviously I'm sure there's plenty of people like that would disagree with me and were alienated and say, fuck this band, for instance. But like, you know, I was never, I think they're cool, but I was just never grew up being a fan. But like Ceremony, an example.
Yeah.
That's a band that had a major departure musically. Yeah. And, you know, you'll still catch them playing Hardcore Fest and like playing small rooms. Like they played AMH recently with Citizen, like, or maybe like a year ago, whatever it was. Like, that's a band that like clearly they're writing songs that are no longer hardcore songs, but like they're still involved in whatever capacity, which is good and a testament to being a hardcore band proper. But like additionally, like the people that probably liked a lot of their more like hardcore shit, like some people just grow with the band, and if you're unabashedly you, I think if you're unabashedly you and like authentically your band, even if that band changes, I think there's a lot more people who will grow with it and be down than who will just, you know, say peace out. And obviously it doesn't always work out that way. There's plenty of times where bands just put out a polarizing record and it just torches the whole thing, perhaps. But I think especially now in this climate, in this era of not just hardcore, but like alternative music, I think you have more people who are just like psyched on bands, psyched on live music, psyched on what's happening around all of us, to where they wouldn't be so fickle per se. Perhaps like a hardcore kid like that wants like a straightforward like representation of what that genre of music is rather than what the scene is per se. Sure, like they might already be checked out on us, and that's cool. Like I get that because I've been like that before too. But I think at a broader scale, especially for our band, as we're doing support stuff, it's this compounding building thing. We're playing to people from outside of our scene. We're bringing in people perhaps even to the scene we come from because that's not their background. Like I think you're poised to have more people grow with you than bail on you when you're operating that way, you know. But if you bail on them, that's where you fuck up.
Yes, exactly. Dude, that is such a good point. And it's funny you bring up Ceremony. I have their most polarizing record, the L-Shaped Man, framed just right above my computer right over here.
Yep. Dope stuff is dope stuff. Like
it's good shit.
End of the day, like if a band changes, like are they still putting out something awesome and authentic? If the answer is yes, that's the answer. You don't need to like chop it up any further, you know. If it's good, it's good.
And I think it's cool like that the fans are catching on because I think the bands, like you're saying, have already figured out hardcore is not a genre. It is like it's a code to live by, you know.
It transcends genre. It transcends at this point in time. And there are points in history where it certainly did not. No. But in the modern landscape, it does. And Long Island, it always did. Like you look at an era of music where you had like VOD, Silent Majority, Neglect, all playing shows together, all sounding radically different from one another. Like metal, like sludgy, like fucked up like evil hardcore and like a very melodic band that literally inspired every emo band to come out of Long Island. Those three bands were all homies and all playing together, you know? So it's like things like that is like why Long Island has always been a living example of that exact thing we're talking about. And that goes for every era that followed. There's always melodic bands, heavy bands, hard bands, and everything in between all playing together and operating under the same roof, you know?
And not to mention like kids too, like they all like obviously now with like streaming and everything like that, it's pretty hard to just be into like one style of music at this point too. Like they're being exposed to so much different music that I feel like, you know, like a band like Scowl, like their new music's incredible, and it sounds to me it sounds like Hole, like from like the 90s.
Yeah,
like
it's my favorite stuff they've done so far. Personally,
it's so cool.
I think it's awesome.
But it's like it's still hardcore, you know, in every sense, you know, like that's so
totally
awesome.
And yo, like what you get when bands do stuff like that too is you get bands that can flow these like really dynamic sets. Like a great example, and they're close friends of mine, and not for the same reasons, but like a prime example of what I'm talking about is like you look at a band like Vane, and at this point their discography is pretty wide spanning. They have everything from like a trip hop single to like the heaviest and hardest stuff you've ever heard. And what that catalog does for them is when they play a 30-minute set, they could take you for a fucking ride, you know, like you can get everything from them. And it's like you look at that band and you go, that's Vane, the hardcore band, you know, like, and there's times where they're sitting there and literally playing like trip hop and jazz, you know, like as long as you're making what's authentically yours, your authentic vision for your fucking music, like the diversity almost like aids what your band is. If that's what you want to do, if you want to expand and get weirder or different, like it all threads into your back catalog too. You can flow it and spin it however you want to, like the people that want to see you. Which is dope.
No, that is super awesome. I think another thing that kind of makes me think about too, though, just like in terms of what this like new age of modern hardcore is, like from an outsider perspective, just from what I've analyzed, like it does seem like there is such a camaraderie within the scene. And when I look at that, and I could be wrong, but like, is it truly that much of like this unified thing? Because to me, it seems like everybody is like best friends, and this scene is just like everybody's kind of, because it really is like you guys are all rising up at the exact same time. It's so cool to see. I do think like there's competition, or does it mostly feel pretty, you know, camaraderie based?
I think it's very camaraderie based, and don't get me wrong, like if anyone's tripping about competition with that stuff, like you're doing the wrong shit with your life, you know, like that, like especially because all the bands we're talking about are so like developmental and all like coming up. It's like like you're not. This could all for all of us, like this could all just disappear tomorrow, and you can go do something else and assimilate into society, and like that's not only fine, but what's expected of you, you know, like no one owes any of us anything for nor does anyone owe our band success. I think if you're gonna be competitive at all, save it for the time where your band's already over. Now you got to preserve, you know, like that's when when you got to have that fire, like once you've already done it. But now it's just like enjoy the fucking ride together. And I do think there's a lot of camaraderie. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of bands that people lump together that might not know each other as well as people think, or perhaps even don't like each other. Like it happens, but it definitely feels like a more unified push than usual. It feels like a real wave is happening, like countrywide, if not globally. Like there's other bands included in that conversation that, like, you know, I think do have, even if they're not super tight, literally speaking, like I think a lot of, myself included, like look left and right and see eye to eye with like what's going on with our peers, and you're like, yeah, let's all fucking win more. Let's run it together, you know? Let's all be fucking psyched. Let's all rep for one another, and you know, this could all wrap tomorrow, and we could all just say we had the dopest life ever and continue to live a dope life, you know?
Dude, this is so wild, and if you don't mind, I'm going to nerd out for 1 second.
No, run it, please.
So I was talking to my friend Joe from Transit and Zach from Man Overboard, and I look at that era of the scene, like you and I are like, I think similar ages.
Yeah. I'm 26. I turned 27 this year.
Okay, so I'm 28. So yeah, we're pretty close in
Yeah,
age.
same age.
So we obviously grew up on those bands, and I always will torture them and punish them with questions like about sort of like what was it like rising up at the time where it was like Transit, Man Overboard, Tiger's Jaw, Balance and Composure, all that.
Yeah, a crazy push of stuff that all obviously went super far.
Went really far. And it felt like for several years, it was like, was that the last time something like that was ever going to happen? Like it kind of felt like that. And I'm seeing it now amplified even more now with what's going on with you guys, Anxious, One Step Closer, Scowl, Drains, all of that.
I think the crazy thing compared to then and now, and not that this is a bad thing, like there's just an observation, is that those bands obviously differ from one another, but still fit under some broader umbrella of sound. Yes. Right now, sound and genre per se go out the window. Like all the bands you mentioned, like it would be my pleasure to do a full US tour with Tsunami. Our bands sound nothing alike. It would, like, they're on paper, even a decade ago, that would be nonsensical. But not only would that be dope and something I would love to do, but that would make perfectly fine sense right now.
It would,
and that's the crazy difference between that block of bands and now. It's like anything really goes, and it's not just like, oh, anything goes, it's fine. It's anything is like awesome, and people are psyched on it.
Exactly. I mean, that is such a wild thing to think about, because that would work so well. And I feel like Koyo, it was kind of like my next question was, Koyo sort of likes to stick out. Like, I feel like, like look at LDB, like, the day you played, like, I think besides you and No Pressure, I think
we were the only ones, the two of us.
Only like fully melodically based bands that day.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Dude, I love sticking out. I loved being the opening melodic band on that Knocked Loose tour, because a lot of the time, like, especially when we're in the Midwest, we're playing to like Monster Energy motherfuckers. Like, we're like metal people, like, and like, don't get me wrong, we're not winning all of them, but if we could even win half of them, like, that's a huge W to me, because those are people that otherwise would not be seeing my band. Same goes for the Stick tour. Like, I want the people that have no business liking my band to like my band. That's why I like sticking out. I want to win the people that wouldn't otherwise check it out if they weren't like explicitly exposed to it by odd terms like that. Things that obviously make sense now, but even like pre-COVID probably wouldn't make that much sense. Yeah. It's dope. It's dope that everyone's on the same page of, yo, this does make sense now. But like, to the patron in the crowd who doesn't like obsess over things like this like we do, or like have like an oversight understanding of that stuff, they're probably just like, what the fuck is this, when they see us play, but by song 3, hopefully they're like, yo, this is awesome.
Dude, I mean, that's what's so crazy. It's like it really feels like there is no rules. Like, you could go do a Tsunami tour, and I hate to use this example, but like, if like, let's say like a huge pop punk band asked you to go out, let's like an All Time Low or something like that.
Yeah.
It would work. Like,
totally. It wouldn't
work.
Both could happen in the same year, and it would make perfect sense, and no one would bat an eye. And that's what's good. That's the way it should be,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy too, because like, you bring up how it used to be kind of like mixed bills like that back in the day. It's like, remember reading, like, it was like Chris Carrabba from Dashboard would like play in between, like, I think it was like, I forget which hardcore bands he was like touring with, but like, it would be like hardcore band, then Chris Carrabba with his acoustic guitar, and then another hardcore band.
That checks out.
But at the time, people were like throwing bottles at him. But it's
at the time, it's like, what the fuck is actually happening? Yeah. And now that people would be beyond psyched for that. It's crazy.
Dude, I mean, that is just so exciting. That just feels like such a victory and such a win for not only you guys in the scene, but just music and society, I think, in general.
And also, like, there's definitely people that like don't feel it. There's, granted, they're like a fraction of who we're talking about here, but like, there are people that don't feel like that's a win. There are people who feel like that's an L of sorts, and that it brings too many people that have no business at shows and to shows, whatever. That's all fine and well. I'm not even saying they're wrong, but what I am saying is that despite all that, end of the day, there's always an opportunity to book a local, like, not corporate, not pro, normal ass hardcore show anywhere you live, and have all the people that go to shows no matter what go to shows. If you tack on a couple extra heads from like the band doing the pro tour, they'll figure it out if they want to be there or not pretty quickly. You know, like that. I don't think things like the current state of how things are, I think people like expect it to impede on like the function of like local shows and like more like proper hardcore and whatnot than it actually does. You know, don't get me wrong, like I see a difference between big shows now and back then, but like when I go to like a normal smaller show at home, like, you know, I see a couple extra people in the room that weren't there before. I see all the same people I've been seeing for the last decade, you know, like, and that's cool. Like, I don't think any people fear that like what we do is in a constant state of jeopardy. And perhaps in other eras, like, sure, if all was operating as it is right now, perhaps it would put like grassroots, like hardcore community in some type of jeopardy. But like, as things are currently going, I think it's right now we're living in the win more, everyone's making dope bands, everyone's fucking mosh, and everyone's going nuts era. Everything is sick and awesome. And like, if you're hating, you know, you could do what people also have classically done with the broader world of hardcore and drop out and go start an entirely different life and get into like ketamine or something. I don't know. Like, you can go do something else, you know, like you don't have to be here. No one has to be here. It's all choice.
I love that. I mean, it feels like you have the more like open door policy, like in terms of the scene. And I think that's so
For
good.
sure.
I think it has to be a positive. Like I hear people talking about it all the time. I think I was listening to it on some podcast. It might have been, I can't remember, but it was like somebody was talking about, it was like, you know, Turnstile is going to go on tour with Blink-182 like this summer and everything like that. And they were like
the most lit shit ever. Like,
which is so lit.
I think most anyone would go, I wish that was me. You know?
Exactly. Like, and somebody was saying like, oh, I forget, it was like some podcast I was listening to, and they were like, there's probably going to be a segment on the Kardashians where like Courtney's backstage, like rocking out to Turnstile. And they're like, that's going to be weird and crazy. And I'm like, that will be weird and crazy, but I think it's a net positive in every single aspect. Yeah. Like,
it's awesome. People will do anything they can to like just try and bring like a negative spin on anything that's happening. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like this, nor am I the fucking mayor of this shit. My say means fucking nothing compared to anybody else. I'm just, because we're on a podcast and discussing this, I guess my take really is just like, like, it is open door at face value, and anyone can walk their way through that door. Just not everyone's going to stay in that room. Inevitably, that stuff sorts itself out. You don't need to proactively, perhaps you don't need to proactively like gatekeep. I hate that fucking term because it just drives me nuts. It makes me like not look at Twitter for days on end because it's just endless discourse and so fucking stupid. Yeah. But like, you don't need to explicitly gatekeep most any random like teenage kid that probably, I don't know, likes metalcore and like found a hardcore band through like a Hate 5-6 video. Like, let them walk in the door. They'll figure out if they want to stay there, you know, like they'll figure it out themselves. And like, sometimes that's in like a fucked up, crazy, awful way. Like they get into some weird fight and never come back. Or sometimes they just go, this ain't for me. And that's chill. And they move on. Like we don't have to micromanage people as much as I think people think we need to, you know?
Yeah. And I also think what's cool about your guys' scene too is you're not only bringing in new kids to the genre entirely, but you're also bringing back people that previously were a part of the community. Like, I mean, like I grew up with hardcore, and I tapped out for several years, and it wasn't until your guys' generation of new bands that really started to bring me back in. And then
I think a lot of people felt that way, honestly. Like this has been like a big, I think it's been a big return to form time for people. Like, there's people I saw at shows like when I first started going that like dipped out for a little while and are now back, and like, cool, you know, that's dope. Like, I'm not hating. Like, I think at this point, I think there were rips and dips in the last decade and change that like the dips make you wish you live in a constant rip, you know, because when shows are ill attended and shot and like there's no dope bands happening, there's nothing cool going on around you, like it feels bad. I rather shit be mobbed and crazy, and there's, you know, even if you dropped out for a couple years, you come back and you're running it. I rather shit be like full throttle right now, and we just make good on it, because even if it recedes, it probably won't recede in to the same extent. You know, it like there are definitely some like real like pre-COVID era, like at least at Long Island standard, because that's really what I'm speaking of. Like there were dope bands all throughout that time, but there were some times where shows were not doing as great as they should for like what's you know, what bands are pulling up and what bands are happening. You know, it's like I don't know. Like I want Long Island to be as full throttle and dope and psyched as possible, and if that means more people in the door or dropouts tapping back in, fucking run it. I don't care. Like I said, I'm not the mayor. I'm out of making the calls. You know.
I just love it. I mean, like on a selfish level, like I love it because, you know, I went through my phases of like listening to like Pitchfork Core, like just like all you know, whatever the hippest thing was, you know, whatever wrestling music was and everything like that. And as soon as I got to AP, it was just like all I really was drawn to was like your guys' scene, and all I wanted to do was like, well, I was too young to do anything about it when I was like getting into hardcore as a kid. Now, in the smallest micro level, I'm gonna go ham and cover as many bands as like from your guys' genre.
Dude, like when you hit us up to do the fucking the interview, we were like, "Are you kidding me?" Like that was like inconceivable to us. Like, dude, and obviously very appreciated, but like that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that that's even a possibility for a band like ours at this point in time. Like I know as we mentioned, this has been a very like I'm trying to like approach this whole interview from a very like self-aware perspective. You know, like obviously we're a band that's been playing to like outside of our scene. We've done the pop punk tours, the emo tours, the metal tours. Like we're playing to people that aren't our people. But baseline level, you remove all that from the equation for our band to be featured in a magazine like AP with a spread. That's fucking crazy and doesn't make sense. You know, like it's awesome and I'm psyched on it and appreciate it. And I suppose like it certainly does make sense. All the things we've been talking about accounted for. But if this same thing happened, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, it wouldn't have happened. It just literally would not have happened, you know? Like, it's we're living in a very different time.
I mean, I was talking to Colin from, you know, Twitching and Hardlore and everything for our interview, and he said the same thing. He was like 5 years ago, like, sorry to make this about AP, but he was like, AP would have never covered that kind of stuff. And like, the perspective starts shifting. And I think those gatekeepers, you know, they start to kind of go away. And then like the younger generation, like maybe people my age or other people at different publications who grew up on the good shit are finally now in the building now.
Making the rules.
Trying to make the rules a little bit again.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's funny. And I think there's plenty more good happening right now at a broad musical scale that's driven by people who came from music in whatever capacity, came from whatever scenes, but actually care about what's happening and want to give bones and push stuff forward and like move the dial forward for stuff they actually care about. And again, like 5 years ago, it felt like there was less of that happening. It felt like there were less people in various higher places, like trying to like lend a hand to bands on the come up and, you know, entities on the come up and fests on the come up. Like it felt like kind of an every man for themselves scenario. You had your peers and you had a couple bands you'd roll with, but it definitely wasn't it wasn't a broad wave infrastructurally either, you know?
100%. And yeah, dude, you know, I don't want to take up too much further time. Just want to end off with maybe like 2 quick little questions.
Yeah, of course. Cool. Please. I'm chilling on time. So whatever you got, I'm here for it.
Word, dude. Yeah, dude, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, dude.
So like with all these tours and everything like that, I want to know if there's been any like fun or like crazy highlights that have happened. I know that's kind of like a generic question, but like if there's anything that kind of comes to mind where you're just like, damn, I'm out on the road. This is a crazy night. I can't believe this is my life right now. Like, holy shit, like moments, you know.
I feel so bad because there definitely are so many. And that's honestly like, it's kind of like the stuff I very much like live for. Like those moments are like what makes me like love touring. And there's definitely plenty with Koyo, but and I mean this genuinely, there's almost like so much volume of that in my brain that I can't even like pluck one out of thin air, because there's just so many times where like we've had a night doing whatever, like this or that happens at the show, like and we're just all sitting there and we're like, damn, this is crazy. This is fiction. Whether it be like the actual whether it be dope stuff like the performed set itself and how it went, or just like so and so was there and thought it was dope, like this friend showed up and did this crazy thing during the set, like things like that like get me buzzing for sure. But yeah, there's also the other side of it, like where like, you know, just funny stuff happens and you're like, yo, this crazy thing. Like there was one time on like I think this is one kind of on the anxious the like anxious full US we did. We played a show in Kansas City, and it was like right across from this like strip club, and there were a bunch of like hammered old dudes there that were just like wandering around, and everyone's like standing around after the show outside, and you know, like this guy comes over and he's like, "Where's my wallet? Where's my wallet?" And we're like, "Dude, we don't have your wallet." And then he goes, "I'll give $100 to whoever helps me find it." So we're all some of us are looking around like, oh, I want this drunk dude's free money. Let's find this wallet. He had the wallet on him the entire time. And then like he just starts like talking shit and he's like being like an asshole, and people are being an asshole back to him, and everyone's like kind of like trading verbal blows with this guy. I don't know. It escalates at some point or another to a point where it's like, all right, this guy's kind of like threatening violence now. Like this might get violent.
Yeah.
Everyone's like pretty much bouncing from the show. Like no one's taking him seriously because he's this hammered old dude. But on our way out, like we all got in the van. The van's starting to like all his friends are coming over from the strip club. Like we're on the cusp of like, oh, this might get weird or bad or terrible. And I whipped the van around and I rolled the window down. And I'm not a mean or bad guy in any capacity. I don't do things like this. But this dude's like Terminator walking towards the van in the middle of the road, and I had like a gross like half drank iced coffee from the day. I just rolled the window down and beamed him with it, and it exploded on him, and he's still like Terminator walking towards the van, and we all just like peeled out and we're like, you know, laughing our asses off. It's like, I don't do stuff like that. This dude was just like threatening to like whoop our asses and shit and like call all his friends over. But it's like things like that are like so like it's like whatever. It's like to some people that'd be like, oh, that sucks, dude. Like sucks you had to like do something like that in any capacity. But it's like things like that are like the uniquely weird, fucked up, hilarious things that only really happen when you're on tour.
That's,
you know, like
I mean, that's fine. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like there's like that's the type of shit where it's like, yo, like that's not that crazy. But, you know, we laughed about it in the van for 3 days straight after, you know, like.
No, I think that's crazy, but I mean, that's just amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
Are Koyo, this is probably an invasive question, but are Koyo edgemen?
3 out of 5 of us.
3 out of 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not really like a party band. We don't go nuts.
No.
We're very we're like weed after the show and maybe like a couple, maybe a drink before the set type band. It's very very chill.
Oh,
not our vibe. And it's like no diss. Like I respect the people that can run it and go crazy like that, but that's just not our MO.
I don't know how anyone can, man.
We're also like, not to say that people like who are older than me don't party that hard. It's just like I'm 26. Like I'm not trying to like get into partying at 26. You know, it's just not where I'm at with that stuff. I'm trying to chill out more in life, you know, than the contrary. So I mean, I'm just trying to hang.
The hangovers start at 26. That's like when it begins. And yeah, there's no way to reverse that.
Yeah. It's like why put yourself through more like more over less, you know? Like I touring can be hard as is, so I'm not trying to make it harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just trying to chill, you know, and that's the broader Koyo, I think, touring ethos is we're like I said, it's best friends. So it's
Yeah.
like no one like takes offense. Also, our band speakers are shot, so that's a factor in this. But no one takes offense in this. Like we're a very like we built bunks in the van. We're like headphones on, knock out, take a nap. Like like we get like we just started getting suites for the first time on tour. So instead of everyone knocking on the floor, now everyone gets a bed.
There
Like
we go.
we're very like we're R&R band. We're like, yo, I want to finish this show, and when we pack up, let's drive 2 hours, go to the hotel, and sleep 8 hours. Like that's the vibe. We like, and there's also variables for that too. Like an example, Harold literally having a job he needs to wake up for. Same with Sal. Like, but like we just like to chill. We're not crazy over the top.
Yeah, no, I'm not expecting Koyo shooting shots of Jack Daniels after the show, and
Yeah, just not our vibe. For unfortunately for whoever may be interested in shooting shots of Jack Daniels after the show.
I love it. And just last question.
Yeah, sure.
Just what are you looking forward to? Like, obviously, I believe so. Obviously, I saw that show got announced with No Pressure. Is that a full tour? I don't know. Has that been announced?
I've been calling it a U.S. tour because literally speaking it is, but like full U.S. perhaps is almost an overstep because it skips Pacific Northwest, skips the Southeast, and skips like a lot of like the Western America stuff. It's kind of just like Northeast to Chicago, down to Texas, and back up to California, and then we drive home. But it is still a 3-week tour. Like it's not. I don't want to undersell it here. Like it's No Pressure's first U.S. tour. Like that's big shit. It's almost sold out across the board. Like almost every show is already either sold out or on the cusp. But it's like basically a full tour,
I think I saw you at the LA show. I think you were like on the stage at the 1720 No Pressure show, like back in like January, I want to say.
Yes, yeah, I went to that. I was staying out there with my girlfriend for like a month, and that was like the day before we went back to New York. We caught that show because it was convenient. It was there, it was happening. I was psyched to see everybody.
Those are probably going to be like the craziest shows ever, right? Like, I feel like the moment.
I feel that way. I mean, dude, 1720 sold out for that show, so they had to do Belasco for this tour. Like it's like it's crazy. I feel like it'll be like the most insane shit, and not to mention like it's a tour of all good friends. Like as we were saying, like obviously Koyo's not a party band, and frankly neither is No Pressure. But and really, like I guess what I'm trying to say is like that's a tour where it's like perhaps I don't know if we'll be partying per se, but we'll be hanging out every night and every day off, like hanging out with Fleshwater because that's obviously some of my best friends. Like like it's a rare moment of like, yo, I have a lot of people that I love under the same roof right now. So like, let's make good on it. Let's fucking hang,
That's going to be fun, man.
It's dope. The tour could be shot and I'd still be, not that there's any world where that would happen, but like it could be a flub of a tour and I'd still be just psyched to be out there with all the people we're with,
I got a question too. Like you mentioned that it isn't hitting the Pacific Northwest. And I've always been curious. I talked to Buddy from Census Fail about this.
Mm-hmm.
And because I live in LA obviously now, but like I'm from Seattle, and historically the Pacific Northwest can be, I think, one of like the hardest markets. I think it's such a weird. How is it ever? Do you feel the love up? Because I'm a little bit removed from it now.
When we play Seattle, I feel the love for sure.
Okay, that's
like
good.
When we play Seattle, it's like I'm always psyched to play there.
Really,
and that even goes back to like. With my old band Typecast, like Typecast for whatever reason did very well in Seattle. When I would tour with Vane, the Seattle shows were always awesome. Like Seattle
with Typecast.
We played a house show and then we played a it's like that art space venue.
Vera Project?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we played Vera Project. And it was awesome. We did a tour with Sanction right before COVID and it went there. And like we didn't expect to do well. Like with no diss, obviously, we were just like, yo, like Typecast isn't a poppin' band in most places, like let alone a place that we kind of got to a little later in our touring time. And Seattle was like super receptive to us, like from the jump, which was awesome.
Here, man. I don't know.
Similar deal for Koyo, like to the point where like we were talking about going up there after the No Pressure shows, but we want to save that for the headliner, which is why we opted out of it. But it was a real conversation for a second.
That's really good to hear, man, because it wasn't like that for a while, it seemed like. I mean, it felt like Tacoma was more of like the hot spot, like,
Hmm.
because I mean, Seattle got kind of turned into San Francisco. It got like really expensive, really techy with like Amazon. So like all the punk
Yeah.
people like moved south to like Tacoma.
Go where it's
That's good to
affordable.
hear. Yeah, dude, that's really cool to hear that you guys have had a good reception up there. Because like
It's dope. Yeah,
I was
I
talking to
think
my buddy,
the
he was
weird
like, "No,
one.
we hate Seattle." Like,
Yeah. For us, I think the weird one is, and not even like bad weird, just like we haven't had like a moment where it feels like it really gelled. Is Portland's a little weirder for us. Granted, we've only been there on like support stuff, so we've only been there with the Stig Show, and we've only been there with Bayside, and like there's definitely people there who like us to whatever degree, but we need to go there and like play like Hawthorne Theater or something. We need to play like a more tangible, more our lane type show, and I think we'll feel it a little more. We've only played to like sample populaces of people who don't know who we are. We haven't been able to go, okay, like if you do know who we are, we're playing here tonight.
have you guys played in Vancouver yet?
Not yet, and I want to pretty badly because same deal. Like Typecast only played there once, I believe. But I was there a couple times with Vane, and it was always so awesome. The shows
Yeah,
there were great.
yeah, dude.
I want to do full Canada so bad too. I did one full Canada with Vane, and like I've been like hungry for it since because like when you have a good, don't get me wrong, like there's horror stories of like full Canada being rough, but like
yeah.
if you catch a good tour for it, like it's sick.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I mean, yeah, the scene is awesome up in Vancouver and Canada in general. I mean, that's super
It's
cool.
dope. The hard part is the middle of of Canada, obviously, because there's just not a lot. It's just
Yeah,
straight highway. Like I
yeah,
remember when I did full Canada with Vane, I think we did like 2 days off in between, like essentially like Eastern and Western to get through Central because there's virtually nothing, let alone people who want to see. At that time, it was Vane, Sanctioned, and Fuming Mouth, which is a lit tour, but like not still niche enough that like Central Canada might not be privy to it.
there might not be a ton of fans in Saskatoon.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo.
Dude, well that's awesome. So other than that, that tour just, like so just kind of looking forward to like the new record, obviously, and like just more touring, you
Yeah,
say like a headliner, like
headliner probably the. So I think what's going to happen and subject to change. Like I'm not blowing any secrets here by saying this, but we're trying to lock in the right support for the fall. We've kind of been shuffling through some options. Like we're trying to lock in something we're like really psyched about, just because like it's our first record's coming out. Then like you want to ring it in the right way. So we have
yeah,
a couple things on the table. We're trying to lock the right one in. We want to do a week of record release shows in the Northeast at that time. So there'll be headliners, like we'll be playing around our area for about a week. And then turn of the year, like, probably like we'll say late February, early March next year, it'll the record will have been out a couple months, maybe 3-ish months at that point, if I have to gauge roughly when it'll come out, we'll say. And then we're going to do like a proper first headliner to support the record. But we wanted to do like one more like support thing before we do it. Let the record come out, let people sit with it for a little bit, feel it, know it. And then hopefully this time next year, we'll be wrapping up our first headliner ever.
dude, man, that is so exciting. That is
Dude,
so cool.
for real. It's crazy because it always feels so far away. And then you get there and you're like, wow, that's already over.
Wow, man. What a really crazy ride it's been so far, man. That is just, and it obviously is literally just getting started. Like
Dude,
LP1
it's
not even
crazy,
out
man.
yet. Insane, dude. So
Blows my
exciting,
damn
dude.
mind. I appreciate it. Seriously. And obviously just appreciate anyone who's made it as crazy as it is, because it's obviously it's not us. We're making music or whatever, and it's cool that people are attached to it, but it's people who are down to like rep for it, throw some money at it, like support it in whatever way, is like that's what keeps it fucking rolling, and in the capacity it's been. Like
Yeah,
being a band super part-time is like not easy per se, but it's very manageable with like life. Like
yeah,
we're at a rate where we had to flip a switch and like go, okay, like certain things go to the wayside because this is it. And that
yeah,
doesn't happen without people supporting it, literally speaking.
dude. Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, dude, I think it's just gonna get so crazy, man. That's so exciting, dude. That's so
I appreciate it. We'll see. I got no read on that. It's anytime anything does even half decent, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Who would have thought? You know, I've no good gauge. I feel like I could read any other artist's trajectory. I think I have a good eye for that stuff. Like I can pluck a diamond in the rough that's gonna blow up next year. I feel like I'm half decent with that shit. No idea with my own band. Clueless with my own band. Couldn't tell you how big or not big we are. Like, no idea.
That's probably a
And for
good thing though, right? Like to
no,
not,
totally, because
yeah.
it makes everything a surprise in a great way. Like just as recently as that LDB set being like absolutely cracked out. And I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. That's awesome. You know, like
Yeah.
it provides a lot of gratitude for my life. It's cool.
Dude, man, that's beautiful. Well, dude, that's all my questions. I just thank you so much for all your time, dude. Such an
Yeah,
awesome
dude, of
chance to
course.
talk to you again. And
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Seriously.
of course, man. Yeah, dude. And just congrats on everything and just really fucking stoked to hear the new music. And
Thank you, yo. I can't wait for you to hear it. You know, hopefully we'll bang it all out in this next week and get it to the fucking presses, you know?
fuck yeah, dude. Dude, well, thank you again so much. And man, we'll talk soon.
For sure. Absolutely, bro.
Yeah, man. All right, man. Take it easy.
Appreciate you. I'll see you.
Yeah.
Be good.